Hi, my name is Kenny, and I'm one of the authors of the Lamb's Danger FSM mod. And in this video, I'll be having a look at some of the native FSMs, that is Danger and Formations FSM, how they work in Arma, and also showcasing a small, lightweight Formations update mod. Now, just as I was about to make this video, in these COVID-19 days, my neighbor started rebuilding his or her floor. So there might be some interruptions there. Apologies for that. Also, I'm looking at a mod in development. Might have some hiccups or troubles there. I don't care. Let's just go with it because it won't actually alter the things I will be looking at. So an AI unit in ARMA is controlled by two sets of FSMs, finite state machines, which is essentially just a way of decision making. And if you open the config browser, you'll find those two entries there: FSM Danger and FSM Formation. Now in this test, I'm running Lamb's Danger. It won't be necessary for the mod itself, but I'm using it because it has some nice debugging tools which will be very useful as we're moving in. And as you can see, FSM Danger has been overwritten by the Lamb's Danger mod, and the FSM Formation has been rewritten or overwritten by my LiteFormation script, formation lite, which is the one we actually have here in the background. Put some talking points here on this screen, so we'll also give you a sense of that. But we'll really just delve into this quite quickly. Let me sum them up in any case if you're viewing this on a separate screen. First, I'll be comparing this to vanilla, looking at some of the inherent features in ARMA. I'll be looking at my own sort of solution and having some points of improvement where I think that modders can really enhance the vanilla ARMA stuff. And finally, behaviors, but just going to look at the implementation of what I've done, some of the weaknesses and some of the strengths, really. So let's compare this to vanilla, and here is the vanilla FSM. Now, it is my understanding that in ARMA 3, this has been is handled in engine. It can still be altered in the config level, but it actually calls many different types of functions which are not inherently accessible. And as you can see, it has a mess of lines going. I've actually done a lot of analysis on this, a bit of experimentation as well. I could probably talk quite a bit about this, but I'm just going to keep things very simple. Essentially, this is the formation function, which determines how the unit will move in formation or when given move orders. And the big sort of breaker is, of course, combat behavior, which also, I believe this function also checks to see if the unit is in stealth. And this is where you get that sort of bounding behavior when the unit is moving a couple of meters, finding a piece of cover, calling out set, and that sort of alternates through it. And like many things in ARMA, this is actually a very interesting, very complicated, advanced piece of code, which is unfortunately poorly communicated to the end user. I cannot stress how cool and how well thought out some of these the covering and the movement behavior is, and I also believe that this has actually been pretty much unchanged since ARMA 2. I've DPBO'd ARMA 2 assets, and you see many of the same things, though there are of course some inclusions. Possibly the most interesting, I did say I wasn't going to talk about this in any detail, but possibly the most interesting thing you can change or play with yourself is actually found here in the search path. You can see those two parameters right there. As if you follow this down, you can see the unit will always start here. Every unit is running the formation at all times. It runs down here, and it checks to see if it is in combat or a vehicle, or not in combat, like that. These are the first three things tested. If it is in combat, it'll go down here and it will go for search path. This is a part of the pathfinding. If it is a vehicle or not in combat, or in one of the excluded formations, we could talk a bit about that as well, but let's save it for another video. It will do a search path but no cover, and we can see that the parameters here are 0, 0. What these two parameters, and they have been unchanged since ARMA 2, do is these two govern. The first one, I believe, covers the distance the unit is willing to search for applicable cover, and the second one has a sort of delaying function, it seems, so how long the unit will wait for another ally to be within a given range or whatever before it starts moving itself. So what we've done actually in the LAM's Danger FSM mod is we've tweaked that parameter, and in the effect of that is units are willing to move further to find cover, and we've also done it so they are more willing to wait for a longer time. Now, if we could alter these parameters on the fly, we would really be able to do some cool stuff with the AI. I haven't found a way to do that in a sensible fashion because it's written into the config and not handled purely on the FSM level in these later versions. We could also add that the formation FSM is compiled with a different style of FSM than what we're doing. But what I'll be doing in other examples, it has the entity fsm.cfg. I am, to be honest, not entirely clear on the significance of that. This might be related to how it is actually written directly into the config level on another step. It might also have to do with the fact that these FSMs, unlike other scripted ones, which is what we generally do, they all have these parameters and functions. They all seem to be calling in-engine functions like that. So in any case, this is the default formation FSM, and here is the lite formation that I've very quickly put together to demonstrate some of the features and areas of enhancement that we can do. Again, it always starts from the top. It is running on every soldier-based unit in ARMA at all times, and the split I've done here is quite simple. Runs start on the init, reads off the destination the unit is expected to move, and then I sort them into 3 different categories here. I have vehicles, if they're on foot, or forced movement. And the forced movement is actually quite interesting, I think, for Zeus players. We'll get back to that at the very end of the video. Clickbait. So what can you do here, which I think is interesting, is well, actually, you know what? Let's go into the game first, and then just have a look at what it looks like when the unit is moving in formation. What that actually even means. Like mentioned, I am running no particular mods. I am running CBA, but it's not strictly required. But I'm running LAM's Danger FSM, which won't have any effect beyond displaying some debug information in this case. And I think I'm running some just quality of life mods as well, enhanced soundscape and things like that, but none of them affect the AI in any meaningful manner. So what LAM's Danger debug gives us is these banners, and of course if you look at their feet, we can actually see move, do not plan. These correspond to the expected destination and set destination commands that exist on an SQF level in ARMA, and if I start moving forward, you can see that these blue lines will also affect that. And the default state of movement for units in formation is this level of, it says move, do not plan formation. This is a type of pathfinding that is used in ARMA. Do not plan formation. If I halt, you can see it stops at their feet like that. It is an interesting aspect to understand how the AI moves, because when I start moving just a bit, no matter my speed, you can see that they actually pathfind in front of me. And this does mean that if I turn quickly, this can get weird effects. and also explains why they're not perfectly moving in line. Now this, what you're seeing here, despite me writing my own mod, corresponds very much with what you see in vanilla, and I think that's fine. If I change formation, you will see them also correspondingly changing their expected destination in a sense.
Form echelon left.
And so on. There seems to be some intelligence about how the movement speed will be determined by the distance they're expected to move and things like that, which we can actually overwrite on an SKF level in the FSM, which I take advantage of in Lamb's Danger FSM, but also in this LiteFormation FSM. So let me just check my talking points here. Yeah, so here you go. This is the basic vanilla ARMA pathfinding, and left unchanged. I don't think this can be improved in any meaningful manner. I will add that it's actually possible to alter formations in ARMA. I've seen a couple of threads explore that. I think there's interesting and useful stuff you can do that, but it needs a bit of thinking. Actually, I do notice them sometimes devolve into a different type of pathfinding, formation planned. Check the wiki to see the differences on these. It might be related to, I mean, this is a wide open field, very little cover. It might be related to how, if the environment gets more complicated, the engine will put more resources on the unit. That's my guess. I'm not going to delve more into that. I'm going to keep it very simple on this nice wide open field. So,
Form way.
What is the cost of writing our own Danger FSM? What are the two big things? Well, like I said, the vanilla one has a very good bounding and cover and concealment type maneuvering. You get the taking up positions on the edge of buildings, peeking out, peeking back in, behind trees, behind stones, and all of that jazz built into the engine. Super blazingly fast, works very well. So if you rewrite your own, you're gonna lose that. So this is my my split of things. Let's look at the foot one first. I read down foot, I look at the behavior, and I say either it's normal, that is safe or aware, or they're in combat or in stealth. And if they are in combat, we go into on action level here, and we have an assault move, and finally the cover move. And this is where we would fit in a advanced bounding and cover system. In my case, I don't have anything like that. I think it will require a bit of not only a bit of voodoo math, but a bit of voodoo coding to get a good system which will run at the same speed or similar speeds as to the engine one. Probably not even possible. That said, there might be advantages to running a formation like this. On the vehicle side, this other arm here, there's another very simple sort of loop going on here. And this is actually where you could fit a more intelligent driver system. I know there are mods that, I think there's a VCOM driving thing. You could fit the VCOM driving module in here, and then you'd be checking that on an FSM level only when vehicles are units are inside vehicles, and happy days. That could be a very easy way of running this without having any extra overhead or stuff like that. So you could do things there, including, I guess, vehicle helicopters and airplanes, if you can think of anything good and creative to do that. I guess it's also worth mentioning that the formation FSM, as rewritten here, has very little to do with immediate responses to danger. There's no shooting, there's no suppressive fire stuff happening inside this sort of this loop here. Let's demonstrate some of these actions. We already looked at normal movement, and that is exactly as you would expect it to function. Let's have a look at combat or danger mode first, and then see what interesting things you can do there. So I toggle them over for
Danger.
Danger mode, and I'll give them a independent movement order.
Move up.
So if I ask him to move like this, you can see that Mr. 2, Lay, he gets a leader planned moving scheme, and around him, the other units will move in sort of formation. Now, what I've changed as one of my sort of pet peeves is that you can actually see them moving with their guns up. And as they close in on their final sort of destination, they'll actually move slower, more deliberately. This is kind of useful in CQB. In addition to that, like I said, I have a rudimentary cover system in place. So units which are not the unit leader will seek out bushes and
move left,
shrubs, trees, rocks, stones, things like that to gain an approximation of cover. But this is a very useful. I think a FSM system like this is actually quite useful if you are a Zeus player. You might actually want something like this because it gives you much more fine control of how the AI moves and
move right.
Because they were not fapping about with getting in and out of cover and stuff like that to the same extent in vanilla. They should be more responsive, which I think is another
move right.
Good feature. Actually, I've set it up so it is possible to hot toggle the various settings for how far out they will search for cover and things like that. They seem to be a bit stuck in that bush over there. That might have been just a faulty logic loop or something like that happening. This can be adjusted on the fly, as you just saw. So that's danger situation. You can see them take up the crouch stance when there's no shooting going on. I have put it in so if they have any degree of suppression, they'll actually drop down prone, prefer prone. They'll move at a faster rate, and then combat stuff like that. But all of the suppressive behaviors, entering buildings, and all of that sort of jazz should be contained, I believe, in the danger FSM, which is another sort of loop that only triggers on a danger situation. So combat and danger mode aren't identical in that sense, as I've talked about before. We can also do stealth. It has been a pet peeve of mine that units tend to, they run from cover to cover, which is absolutely
move up
ridiculous. So in this sort of rewrite, that has been changed. Instead, you will see them move deliberately and carefully, like that.
Standing by.
They'll like to go prone when there's cover nearby, and much like the previous mode, they'll seek out bushes, stones, rocks, trees, and stuff like that to get into cover. And they'll try to get in a position where they will be behind the cover as it, depending on the direction the formation is moving. And here you can see the sort of effect of this. This guy is moving into the bush, even though the place he's supposed to be is right next to where I'm standing. And you can see it changes between do not plan formation and that formation planned mode. I'm taking a bit of time to settle here. Again, this might be setting related or something like that. You can always brute force things in the in the FSM, like you can do stops and things like that, but that's something you should really try to avoid for the simple reason that you want these mods to be seamless. At least that's
move left.
What I aim for when I do these things. They're taking a bit more time to respond here, and the reason for that is I've built that in just as a sort of a test. We can have a look at that here. I put in a small delay. This also makes stealth more deliberate action. The delay turns to 0 if they are actually in danger or if the location they're being asked to move to is
Move 75
much
meters
farther
back.
away than just a bush next to them. As you can see here, this gets a much faster level of movement. In the code for the stealth, there's also some logic to whether or not there is an enemy spotted, and if there's an enemy nearby they can see, they will prefer the prone position, and if not, they'll try to remain in a lower middle position like that. So I think this is actually an improvement on the vanilla stealth system. So that's a practical stealth example. I thought about actually I could demonstrate this with some AI, but I'm gonna skip that just to keep the video in a shorter range. But this of course leads us to the final clickbaity thing, and as I mentioned in the intro, a light formation like this would be very useful if you are a player heavily invested in Zeus, perhaps even in a Zeus versus Zeus. You want something like a more RTS style AI, full or forced movement. And this is the third arm of this. You can do a forced movement, and in this case the logic is quite simple. If it's running a full speed mode, or the unit is fleeing, or in this case Lamb's Danger force move is in effect, this variable is used sometimes within the mod to the Lamb's Danger FSM to skip danger states, just to force movement on the AI instead. But you can also do so on a formation level, and that's where it gets interesting, because anytime you force you set the unit speed to full, you will get a direct movement to wherever it's supposed to go. So in theory, and I think this needs a bit of tweaking as well, but this can be a very potent way of getting units to break contact, again, even if they're in combat mode, which happens much further down, as you can see. So units set to full movement will move very deliberately, very aggressively, and you can get them to break off contact or stuff like that. I don't think you can set full contact movement speed via the internal options here, but I guess I can guess that should do it.
Move right.
Solid copy.
You can see them stand up, and oh, there you go.
Move 75 meters right.
Standing by. Will go.
And again, full movement speed in this case. This turns into a forced movement speed. As you can see at the very top, at the banner here, or below for that matter, blue, they're in stealth mode. And
Danger.
like I said, normally
Move
vanilla,
right.
this you have them fapping about with cover and things like that. Full movement speed like this, very potent, very simple way, very intuitive way for Zeus or anyone else to get them to move directly and exactly how you want them. And that really ends it. If you have any questions, drop it in the thread or in the YouTube thing here. I'm going to be looking a bit more at this. If you want to contribute, feel free to drop a line. I'm going to put this on GitHub and everywhere else. I think in particular, if you can create a more advanced bounding and cover system, you could get units to not only take cover on the side of buildings and peek out and do all that stuff. That can be done in SQF, but it needs a bit of mathematics, I believe. But you could get them to take cover behind vehicles. You can get them to move closely in line behind vehicles and stuff like that. A more intelligent driver system, if you can afford the frames for it, you could do stuff where you have a much more active detection of if there's something in the road. This is how I believe the VCOM Drive AI, though I honestly haven't looked at it, that's how I would construct it anyway. You could fit that into this for all types of ground vehicles. You can even do interesting stuff for air vehicles if you can. Sky's the limit here. If you could figure out the something intelligent to do with birds in the air. Actually, I will finalize on a final thought there as well. The one mode we didn't discuss
Relax.
is, of course, safe, which is in the FSM. Is just considered normal. It takes us down here and goes back into the loop. The FSM always loops like this. That's how it works, right? Through different states. And safe
Fall
mode
back.
actually has a
Roger
very
that.
interesting hard-coded system to it. Oh, that's still set to full. Is it normal? Is it? I think it is. So what happens when you go into stealth mode, I've noticed, is you can see how they go into formation plant. That's not my formation FSM doing anything. That's actually default engine behavior.
Fall back.
Where
Copy that.
you'll also notice that they go in a sort of column formation. They're being forced into that because the safe mode is in effect, and they're doing that formation plant. There seems to be some overwriting kind of shenanigans going on. Now that I think is doubly interesting because you could apply that for CQB. I've done something like that with the Lamb's Danger FSM in file and diamond formation.
Form file.
But I absolutely imagine it so you could actually override let's say the file formation to say have a much more aggressive pathfinding thing where when you put them into file formation instead of doing the
Stay sharp.
default file formation, which isn't terrible by any means, but if you could override it with, as you can see, I get in a file formation and they're trying to pathfind like 5 meters in front of me, which does make sense, but it gets a bit weird when you do this. Well, what I'm saying is that you can create a conga line by overwriting the formation level FSM. So you could get something very interesting going on for CQB type business there. I guess particularly if you have a player-led squad, you could have a sort of a simple breadcrumb system. So units that you have to that formation would try to just follow the breadcrumb trail behind the leader wherever that leader is moving. I think that's an interesting system because this with the formation happening in front of you like that could possibly be tweaked a bit. Now again, Arma formation level AI is absolutely not in a bad place by vanilla, but here are some interesting areas of improvement. In particular, if you could rewrite, improve, update, or get to a more interesting place with the cover and bounding movement type things.
Stop.
Understood.
Like my character just said, I think it's about time to stop. Thank you for listening and watching. And again, drop your questions to any thing you have. So that's it from me. Kenny out.